Welcome to the Kind Leader Podcast, where empathy meets action in the world of leadership. Your host, Gino DeGregory, engages with innovators and seasoned professionals from diverse sectors, all demonstrating the power of leading with kindness. And now, your host, Gino DeGregory.
Welcome to the Kind Leader Podcast. I'm your host, Gino DeGregory. Today we have another amazing guest with us, Jonathan Mills. He's currently our culture strategist at Corporate Culture Specialist. I've known Jonathan for almost a decade. While we initially connected through technology, we are now re-engaging through our leadership passion. Through his company, he is pushing operations empathy, which I'm very interested to learn more about, with our audience, because it really touches into the emphasis of what kind leadership is all about. So more to come for that. So Jonathan, welcome to the show. So please share a little bit of your background and share your experiences that have shaped you as a leader.
Okay. Yeah. No, thank you. Thank you, Gino, for having me today. I am from the core just a business analyst. Really. I mean, I I love process and I love straight lines and clean angles. And that's what I've done professionally for the most part, right? I got into business intelligence initially in my career and enjoyed both the limitations of working on process and the sheer, pure creativity of it. It's like being in a sandbox, like playing with Legos professionally, right? And it's a lot of fun. And I did that mostly with federal clients, so DHS, DOJ, DHS, as you know, we work together there, and then Navy Medicine and Veterans Affairs, doing a lot of just a variety of things. Business analyst work is a big bucket,
right?
But it remains all about process. So I've done process engineering, requirements engineering, technical writing, strategy development, always working on that process mindset, but that is not a type of work that's natively connected to purpose.
Right.
Especially as a contractor. I was always several steps removed from why the heck we're doing the work we're doing. And at the same time, I don't do well having a boss. I don't like being told how to work all that much. Yeah. I love being trusted and I love trusting. Right. So what that did for me in a contracting space was, with like multiple layers of bosses, I just kind of died inside, never knowing why I was building what I was building, and never being allowed to contribute to really sort of the high-minded, imaginary thought processes that I wanted access to. Gotcha. If that makes sense. I wanted to be in the room. I wanted to participate. I wanted to be an equal voice. Anyway, all that is to say, I was not healthy as a person in that space. And then I found corporate culture as something I could study as a subject. And I discovered that it's analytical, it's process-oriented and design-oriented. You can actually look at culture as this system or construct, and that just kind of hand in glove with my way of thinking.
Gotcha.
And functioning. And it connected me with purpose.
Nice.
And so I drove myself in that direction as best as I could. And that's when my career in corporate culture started.
Nice. When
I quit my job in DC to attempt to make something new.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate the background and, and understanding, because I do want to pull a thread later on. You describe, especially a lot of government contractors, where you're 3 layers, people are on site working, right? Whether you're in a cleared environment where you are really just embedded into that organization they're supporting, and you may or may not have some connection, right, to your organization that's providing, that you're part of, right? And definitely want to talk a little bit more about that, and because I think a lot of government contracting companies do have that challenge, because you're so removed, right, in a way, right? But how do you build that connectivity back to the employee so that not only they can feel like they're trusted, but they're also part of something bigger, and understanding the why. It's not just a butt in a seat. It's not just delivering the work and getting paid. It's not just about that. But we'll come back to that. The first question that I always ask my after they introduce themselves is, what does being a kind leader mean to you?
Kindness is something that everyone has access to, right? I mean, as a parent, kindness means I'm serving my kids. A friend who is kind just means that they are supportive of me, or I'm supportive of them, right? We all have access to this. When you put kindness, or you relate that to the position of leadership, and leadership is either a set of characteristics that everyone expresses. I think that's true. Right. All people have access to being leaders.
Right.
There's also positional leadership.
Right.
We actually have a role of, it could be administrative management or decision making, but it's a position of power and influence and awareness. And so a person who is kind, who also has power, is taking responsibility for their influence on that domain. There is no abdication of, I can't help that, I can't influence that. So what I see as kindness in a leader is when they are trying to express service and compassion and good on the environment around them,
right,
and in the domain of their power. Does that answer your question?
It does. To be honest, there's no right answer, right?
Yeah.
It's really it's what your perception or your perspective, right, of kind leader is. Because every person that I've asked, this is episode 19th, and every time I've asked is there's a connectivity. Obviously, people will say kind, empathy, and all that stuff, but they answer it in their own ways. And the way you describe it's like different than others, but very similar, if that makes sense. Because you provide some your perspective, if you're from your background, your experiences, and what you've been through, right, in life. Put you on the spot here. I'm curious on, is there a particular example where you've been a kind leader to others in an organization, or you have a phenomenal, boss that has been a influencer and a leader to you that you would like to share?
Yeah. So I had a team leader, project manager when I was a contractor, and he was just a nice person, right, on principle, right? Which a lot of folks are, but what made him important to me at that time was that he was managing us from a place of his own principles, as opposed to from a place of the management norms and paradigms of the workspace. So the contracting space can be hostile,
of course,
right?
Yeah.
At worst, and at best can be oppressive. Gosh, neither sounds good. Neither sounds okay. And if a local leader, right, leader of a small group, is willing, they observe the unhealthy nature of what's around them, they can foster that subculture. And he went out on a limb to do that. It was risky for him,
right,
because it was not looked on as good management. But I was so much happier on his team.
Why do you think it wasn't looked like as good management?
Why was it not considered good management? Well, the higher up the chain you go in a fear-based organizational structure, the greater the impetus to force results. It's not just that. It's not just that. When you're in a fear-based environment as a contractor specifically, the contracting professionals may see you as a threat, as a risk, right? Here's this group of people that are not us, who are coming in, doing a bunch of work.
Right.
And if we're not careful, they are going to build something that puts us out of a job, or they're going to make a mistake that we take credit for. And if they're successful, we get credit for that too.
Right.
And our bosses are breathing down our neck, right? Our bosses are scared of their bosses, are scared of their bosses.
Right.
So you get this chain, and suddenly there's a person in that chain who's not afraid and not carrying out a management practice that's a reflection of fear.
Right.
Not welcome. Right. And this is all from the perspective of the subordinate, right?
Right.
From the bottom looking up. So there's a lot of this that I can't see.
Of course.
But it's based on perspective I've built about the overall culture.
Fair enough.
There.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then I know I took a different angle there when you were answering your question, but when you said fear-based decisions, and that's such a scarcity mindset, right? Perspective, where it really slows down, and it doesn't really allow anybody, whether it's at the individual level all the way to the leadership level, where you're constantly thinking fear. I don't have enough. I can't do this. I'm going to get fired. I'm going to not deliver this. So all those different thoughts that keep coming to your mind, it limits you from creating the best thing that you can create. Think about that, because you're constantly that voice that tells you you're not good enough, or that that voice that tells you, no, maybe just stay in this little box. It thinks it's protecting you, but it really isn't. In this philosophy or framework, I even share it with my kids, right? Don't make decisions out of fear. Take a step back.
Yeah.
What is it that you really want to do? What is it that you really want to impact? What is it that you want to create? And if you're not in that growth mindset where abundance is anything and everything is possible, it's hard, because the scarcity mindset, or you don't have the basic foundations to live, right? It's hard to even think like, oh, anything is possible. You're crazy, Gino. How can everything be possible? And I was just expanding on your answer there from, this individual that really impacted you. You saw him as you were a subordinate. You saw him as like, he's different than others. He's treating me like an equal. He's treating me with where my voice counts. He's treating me where I can make a difference and not just do your job. Make sure you do your 80 or 40 hours a week. Right? You see what I'm saying?
Yeah. To be fair to my many other managers that I had over time, a lot of good people.
Of course.
Right? What set this person apart? I don't know. Maybe it was a level of kindness that he had. Maybe it was his willingness to be distinct from his surroundings, or his strong sense of self that he brought. But you're absolutely right about the paralyzing control that can come from fear. Fear is information from my perspective, right? If you feel fear, that's information, right? Why do you feel that way? Are you in a new environment? Are you facing a challenge that you're not used to? But that is not a direction for your decision making.
Right.
You need to take into account the many other things that are at play and try to make the next good decision. Right. Which is pretty objective. What is the next good decision going forward?
Right.
Towards some future that we want.
Right.
Or in maintenance of some good we're maintaining. Right. Or in service to others.
Right.
And then you make a choice through fear.
Right.
Say, I'm walking through this fear. I'll tell you what, one thing I've learned as an entrepreneur is the things that make me scared are sometimes the most fun, rewarding experiences.
Of course.
Because I come out of it and I've done it. I'm like,
yeah, that
was cool.
See, it's possible, right?
I've grown.
and that's a great point as it relates to you walk through that fear, right? I practice this when I'm fearful. As an entrepreneur, I face a lot of different challenges, a lot of good things as well. But when I face those challenges, or in which the fear sometimes come up, I ask myself 5 different questions, kind of differently, in a way that, why do I have this fear? What is this fear going to do? Like really digging through it, like uncovering, like peeling the onions, right? Of that fear. Because sometimes when people get that fear, automatically, I'm out of here. I'm gonna do something else, right? Because that's not comfortable. That is not what I want to do. I don't want to feel like that, right? And you walk away. But the best thing that I've seen, just to your point just now, face that fear. Go deep into the fear. Uncover those layers and find out the real reason why you're fearful. Sometimes it's out of your control. Sometimes it's an illusion that you've created in your mind. So anyways, those are the things that essentially, when it comes to the growth mindset and scarcity mindset, and I'm glad you shared kind of your background. But I would love to talk a little bit more about it. I think it might be in sync with what we're talking about, which is operations empathy in your organization that you're putting together. Yeah. Tell us a little bit more about that, the framework.
Yeah, I would love to. So as a foundation, organizational culture, you can describe that as the overall experience of the people inside of an organization, right? And there's lots of contributors to that culture, what that experience looks like. But it can be viewed as a system and as a set of trade-offs that are made. With every policy decision, with every organizational design choice, every client decision, you're choosing between alternatives to either create more of A and lose some of B, or the other way around, right? If you want more autonomy, you have to give up some control. Mm-hmm. It's a tug of war between different values dimensions. And we can work on that culture proactively, but it really helps to have a target state, a model or approach for what the organization looks like and behaves like someday in the future when we've finished all of our work.
Gotcha.
Operations empathy is, for my work, it serves that purpose of describing an end state. Now, the origins of operations empathy as a concept comes from an understanding of interpersonal empathy. I have, through all of my experiences, observed consistently that the behaviors and experiences of empathy between people and in an organization, it's always the thing that I'm trying to get to. It's always the thing I'm after. I'm always wanting to be heard. I'm always wanting to be objective. I'm always wanting to see the world and see the opportunities within context of everything else. And I'm always wanting action to follow. And it's when those things fail that I've felt burned by my experiences. And when it dawned on me that interpersonal empathy is a somewhat mechanical process that looks like that, where you're listening actively,
right,
objectifying that information, right, because you need to have a level head. You're contextualizing that information because you need to understand not how to react or reflect this other person. You need to understand how to respond in service to their needs.
Right.
And then you have to act and you have to be proactive. To give you an example, if my daughter came to me really, really grumpy and mean, and I know it's 5 p.m., right? I'm not going to answer her with my anger, hopefully, right? That's why I try.
Right. Yeah.
I'm going to recognize through the process of empathy that she's hungry. And then I can provide food. Right? That empathetic cycle can be modeled at an organizational level.
Interesting.
And so I'm looking through operations empathy, I'm looking for activities that I call shared learning, objectivity, contextualization, and responsiveness. And that is a cycle that occurs between the workforce and operations. So now we're working on the mechanics of the organization, operational design, policies and procedures, everything intentional about the organization, everything that's meant to be static, shaping that to be in service to the organic part, the people. And I believe that's a responsibility of kind and empathetic leaders,
right,
to exert our influence on the things we usually don't pay attention to.
Right.
Operations.
Right.
Yeah. Did that get to answering your question?
Yeah, absolutely.
And
I have
does it fit in?
several follow-ups on that, because you said internal empathy, right? I think that's the word you use.
Interpersonal, but
interpersonal.
Yeah, same difference, really. Yeah.
Expand a little bit on that, because I want to understand the way I've described kind leadership. Also, there's a servant leadership, right? The people are all about serving, and kind leadership is a component of that, or has a component of that. But I always feel like, as a kind leader, you start with yourself. You got to be kind to yourself. Because if you're not kind to yourself, how can you be kind to others?
Mm-hmm.
And we forget that sometimes, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we brought up the whole interpersonal empathy. Like, I'm trying to connect the dot. Maybe I'm missing the mark here, but does that resonate with that? Is that what you meant by that? Or expand a little bit more, please?
So interpersonal empathy, with that, I'm referring to the interplay between two individuals.
Okay.
So, person A expressing themselves, person B ingesting that, contextualizing, and responding in positive action.
Right.
Yeah. So, specifically that is...
But you can do that internally too, right?
Walk me through that.
Because you are, how you feel, or how you, like sometimes something happens, right? You automatically, there's a voice telling you, that's receiving that message, that feeling. Mm-hmm. And that voice automatically tells you, like, if it's like, you, to example, if you're a kid, right, might yell at you, it's like, shut up, you'll be fine, right? You're having that conversation in your head.
Yeah.
So that's what I meant. It's like, it starts with yourself, right? In a way, right?
You're right. You're right. I hadn't identified that, but I've observed it.
Yeah. Because I experience that all. Yeah, because I experience that all the time, right? It's like, okay, I'm experiencing life right now. Something happens. The feeling of that experience hits me. And then there's a voice trying to protect me saying, don't step into that hole, all right? Or just jump through it, right? It's like there's that interpersonal kind of conversation.
Yeah.
And if you're not kind to yourself or leading, right? It's a kind leader to yourself, it's not going to take you the same way. So once you start working internally, I feel like, and this is just a different perspective that I have, right? That's why I wanted to connect the dots there. How can you truly be that leader, that kind leader to others, right? That empathetic leader to others if you're not empathetic to yourself?
I think that's beautiful. There's a concept that I've latched on to, and it's a concept described by C.S. Lewis, if you're familiar, philosopher. Mm-hmm. He was describing the nature of reality and the nature of personhood. Mm-hmm. And what I latched on to is that you and I are two different minds, two different individuals. Mm-hmm. The reason we are distinct from one another is because there's an environment between us. Yep. We have flesh and blood and physics and material and atoms between us. That separates us so that we are enabled to have a relationship.
Right.
If we were not divided, we could not connect. Mm-hmm. We couldn't express love or compassion or kindness to each other. I can resonate with what you're saying because I think that's in Congress with this spectrum of empathy, as I see it. Mm-hmm. Empathy occurs both for an individual, like internally, we take care of ourselves, we reflect, we try to be mindful, we try to be, try to exercise self-care because we have this internal ecosystem.
Right.
And then we have an equal responsibility to exercise those activities with the environment that's between us. It's, it's sort of like, I see the outside of me as needing to be an extension of the inside of me.
Right.
I talk about with my work, I talk about the external because that's what I'm focused on, right? That's what I'm trying to work on. But that can't happen without healthy people being plugged in.
Exactly. And that's the key too, right? Is you have the systems, right? You have the puzzle pieces coming together. But if you don't have the right energy, the right attitude, the right people that are fit, that can help drive that system or culture, that's the missing piece, I think. And those individuals need to be strong. And they don't have to be the same people, right? Like, meaning like personalities. Personalities are different. Somebody asked me the other day, you talk about kind leadership or being a kind leader, and sometimes you communicate that to the company, and people expect for people to be the same as you. Like, what I'm trying to say is, like, do I have to be like Gino and talk like him and execute like him in order to be kind leader? And that's not right. I am who I am, right? I am a different individual that, like you just explained, we're totally different people, right? But how we execute things, how we deliver, we can still be kind. We can still be empathetic. We can still do the things with our own unique character. But this person asked that question and it threw me off because, oh, wow, I never thought about that. Because, I'm here, I'm champion, I'm pushing like kind leader. And then like, okay, do I have to be like you in order to be a successful kind leader? No. Does that make sense?
Well, yeah, diversity of thought and experience and expression is a fundamental piece of community empathy. It's absolutely essential.
So as you're talking about your framework, your experiences, and I feel like after the pandemic, there's been a lot of like shift into really taking care of yourself, right? Mindfulness and that kind of stuff. And with your organization that you started several years ago, where do you see the vision for new leaders coming up or restructuring our organizations to follow, this empathetic? What do you see that going?
Yeah. So we can talk about sort of the character traits of a particular leader. I think that's very important. We can also talk about the community of leadership, which is more where my attention is. By that, I mean there are incredibly capable people in every organization with no opportunity to be a leader, who are not being given enough trust, who are not being given enough decision power. What I believe I will see, and that the concept of operations empathy and working on culture as a system, that doesn't drive towards a specific model of organization. It drives toward a capability of improvement.
Gotcha.
Right? So it's not about transforming organizations from A to B. It's about transforming organizations into whoever they are with the ability to self-reflect and improve and move towards empathy.
Gotcha.
But I think that will mean organizations flattening a lot of their power structure. That is not necessarily a reduction in the work to be done or a reduction in the amount of power in the organization or the decisions that must be made, but it is a right sizing of position in service to healthy people in a community.
Right.
So really, it's increases in autonomy, because through, with empathy, if you're pushing after empathy, you are wanting to elevate voices.
Yep.
You want all voices to be heard.
Right.
Which means everyone in the room needs to be psychologically safe, which means they need to feel equal.
Right.
And that means you cannot have unhealthy power structures.
Right.
And an unhealthy power structure is not one with a toxic leader. It's any structure that is prone to creating toxicity. And that's a very mechanical thing.
Right. But do you think that's the direction where new leadership paradigm or practices? That's where I was getting at. Like, what's the vision? What is the future of that, right? And I think then that's why I felt like you started this organization, because you're seeing a lot of that momentum and a lot of that hunger for this is what we need in order to be successful, or
We will see the overall paradigm of leadership, at least in our national culture, shifting towards greater amounts of awareness and empathy and kindness. That will not fully supplant the drives for conditioning people instead. So there's a competition between service to one another, which is going to be incredible and way more fulfilling and meaningful.
Right.
Where people feel like work is just one part of their great long life.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah.
That's in competition with our growing ability to condition one another, because the more we understand psychology, the better technology we have. Management science in that direction will evolve towards manipulating human beings into feeling and behaving a certain way.
Interesting. We may have to circle back another time to expand on that thought for sure. But I think we don't have time to kind of expand on that. But I appreciate the comparison or the competition as you describe it. So a few more questions. What does success as a leader mean to you?
Success as a leader means that I see myself and others as human beings, and I can regard them in healthy ways. I can relate to them in healthy ways. And that I'm being responsible with the system of work to make it supportive of those people. I am not my position. You are not your position. That's just a role you fill and a set of functions you do.
Whoa.
I want to see that you are healthy and heard and fulfilled and made better by where you work. A good leader will work on the mechanics and all of the behind the wall stuff to help support that.
That was beautiful, Jonathan. that was beautiful. I liked it because you are not your role. People's role define them. And again, this is another topic that we could talk for a while, but I tell people when it comes to your feelings, your emotions, right? You're not your feelings. You're not your emotions. You're the awareness of your feelings and emotions. And now bring in the roles. You're not your emotions, feelings. You're not your role either. You're the awareness of what you're supposed to deliver, right? And how you contributing and integrating with that group or organization or whatever, right? So I love that. Thank you for sharing that for sure. Yeah. That was amazing. So if you could have coffee with anyone alive or from the past, who would it be and why?
Oh, Lord. Well, if it's so that I can experience personal growth, probably C.S. Lewis.
Okay.
I would be so intimidated. I would probably be one in a crowd just listening, right? If I wanted to geek out, it would be Tolkien.
Okay.
And just learn and listen to, how the heck did you invent your own languages and build this incredible narrative with your life? So
very nice.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you for sharing that. Where can our listeners connect with you? Find you on LinkedIn or website?
Yeah. I'm on LinkedIn. I'm on Facebook. I have a website. So Corporate Culture Specialist. It's you should look me up. You should just search me, Corporate Culture Specialist, on any social platform. But you might navigate to me just by /culture specialist.
Okay.
Or is it my page names? But you can also do culturespecialist.com.
Perfect.
Or corporateculturespecialist.com.
Perfect. Awesome. Any final thoughts for the audience?
I don't know what the heck you do professionally, audience person, but you have distinct potential and creativity and energy that's essential. Think of your environment, everything you have around you and access to as an extension of that potential, right? Everything around you is an opportunity.
Beautiful, beautiful. Well, thank you, Jonathan, for coming and being part of our guest. Amazing, several nuggets of wisdom there you've shared throughout the podcast today. So we appreciate it. We thank you for the audience. Continue to listen. Please, give us a like and subscribe to not only our podcast, but we have a YouTube channel and an Instagram channel now with we've created shorts and reels, and just put the word out there. Again, the more we learn, the more we can continue to communicate and empower people to become the better version of themselves. That's what we're here. That's what we're all about. So with that, be kind, bring value, rise together. Have an amazing day, everybody.